What's happening? I'm Olly Steele,
I'm Phil Short.
and we're going to chat for a short amount of time
A short amount of time.
about Phil's brand new track, Eddie's Yard. How are you feeling about it? When did it come out? 4 days ago.
Yeah, it came out on the 18th of August.
How are you feeling about the release and everything?
Super pumped, actually, like quite overwhelmed. I've been really, struck by the amazing response of everybody. So that's been really cool. So thanks to everybody who's checked it out or like bought a copy with JTC or has been streaming it on Spotify. I really appreciate you.
And if you haven't, you can check it out on Apple Music and Bandcamp as well.
Yes.
Which is great because it will support Phil, and then he can get new guitars. It's clever. Let's talk about how the song came to be. What does that look like? How does it happen? How did it happen, sorry?
Yes. Well, this song came to be, I had a few riffs that were just like knocking about on my computer at home, and I've been wanting to get back into songwriting, which is something that I hadn't done for like at least a decade, probably a bit longer than a decade really, mainly because I've been working as a session player, as a guitarist, so you just end up not really spending that much time, well I don't anyway, end up spending that much time thinking about your own music because you're kind of constantly concentrating on other people's music. And you might like write parts for people's tunes or come up with ideas for arrangements and things, but you're not like doing your thing. So I really wanted to get back into doing my thing. And we ended up working on it together because we reconnected after like not seeing each other for about 10 years.
Literally.
Yeah, a mutual friend's party, and we were just like chewing the fat on how the last 10 years had gone for both of us and like the different directions our music had taken us in. And I was kind of saying, yeah, I really want to get back into writing, but I find it hard to do on my own. I hit a brick wall and I just kind of give up and stuff. And you were kind of saying, oh, I really like writing music. I'd be up for, like kicking some ideas around with you. And I was like, cool, all right, let's do it. And then we actually did it. So yeah. That's kind of how we got rolling with this tune.
That is the thing about being a musician is a lot of musicians and you will bump into them at the pub and there's a lot of let's start a project, let's start a podcast, let's write an album, we should collaborate. So the fact that we did and this is the result is pretty sick.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I wanted to ask you a couple of things about the tune in general. The main thing for me is, do you have a favorite part? Because this song for me is just a big ball of moments. Something's happening all the time, if that makes any sense. Like the drums are always doing something interesting, so is the bass. The riffs are always good. The lead playing is very developed and articulate. Do you have a favorite moment out of all of that madness?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Yeah, there's loads of cool moments to pick from, as you say. I think the highlight for me is the chorus idea, because it's cliche to say, but like a chorus makes a tune, right? So if you've got like a catchy moment to come back to, it's like something that you can sing. So getting like a good chorus, getting like your hook is like the hard part to do, and it's usually the simplest part of the tune. But my favorite sort of chorus is the second chorus, where we have a variation going into the second part that leads into like a new section at that point in the song. And this was something that we'd kind of talked about because we'd finished the tune and then I'd gone off on tour and we were going to start recording it when I got back in the new year. So I was just kind of spinning it and listening to it. And
as far as we were concerned, the composition was done.
Yeah, as far as we were concerned, we were like, I think we had a couple of small things left to finish, like a couple of...
But nothing fundamental.
Like the structure was there, it was written, like the body of parts was there. And I messaged you and I was like, does the second chorus need a variation as well? Just a small one.
And I predicted that you would. But, and I always felt like the chorus was fine, repeating verbatim. You can throw a variation on anything the second time. It's not necessary all the time. But I just felt like we might mess with a good thing. Yeah. So when you said that, I was initially a little bit apprehensive, like, okay, I guess we'll see where it goes. But then you sent me so many cool ideas. It's got the band unison line and the sweep and like the bass gets involved and all that stuff. So it was definitely worth doing. But initially I was like, oh man, now it's like, now we're rewriting in a sense.
Yeah.
But the result was incredible.
Yeah, I was pleased with how that bit kind of came off.
No,
and then
you smashed it.
My other favourite part is the second pre-chorus, because I remember we were sat in this room and you were at that computer and being like, right, we're going to do variation on the pre-chorus now. First section, we're going to use this technique. Second section, we're going to do this rhythmical idea. This bit's going to be tapping. This bit's going to be... And I was like, whoa, it's like, give me everything you've got in these different things, and like start chopping stuff together. So like that whole moment is like so compressed with ideas. Like it's chocker full of like lead guitar techniques, but like heavy chords and crazy rhythmical stuff in the drums and the bass, and it's like everything is going on, and then it goes back into the chorus again, and it's just a really exciting front end part of the tune.
Chunky.
Yeah.
And we maybe, I wouldn't say overused, but we got a lot of mileage out of the inverted power chord thing.
Yes.
Because now you're playing in effectively 7-string register, which is obviously something that I quite like. Yeah. At no point did I think this song would be this kind of heavy and riffy. Mm-hmm. So that was very exciting to me. Incidentally, my favorite part is the post-chorus riff.
Yes.
Because when you sent me that when we were still just sending texts of demos or whatever, little riffs. And when you sent me that, that's when I realized, oh, this is going to be a riffy song. I'm definitely down now.
I remember you being very excited about that riff, and I was like, oh, this is like a cool like functional little bit to get us into the next part. But you were really excited about that.
I was hyped.
And I was like, oh, okay, cool, all right, I'm on board then. So that was a good confidence boost for me for the rest of the tune.
The other thing I wanted to chat about is there's one or two outside moments, which, if I'm not mistaken, are both actually happy accidents that we distilled, which is the word of the day, into what they are now. Do you want to talk a little bit about the outside playing thing in this context? Like, how does that feel? What does that look like in your brain?
Yeah, so, like the outside playing ideas just kind of create a little bit of kind of spice and kind of tension. So I really love the rock fusion and bass player guys. So I love Greg Howe, as lots of people have been saying. They can hear that in there. Yeah. I've listened to a lot of Greg Howe. I love Richie Kotzen as well, who also, like early on in his career, did a lot of that kind of thing. Obviously, big Guthrie Govan fan, and he's amazing at doing that stuff, like in a rock guitar context as well. So I just really love that tension and release kind of stuff. So I thought there's like a cool opportunity here to bring some of those elements in. And I'd been studying up on kind of harmonic things that have a jazz heritage, because as a session player I ended up playing a lot of styles that use a lot of chords and colours and vocabulary from kind of that side of things, like a lot of gospel, a lot of R&B, even like a lot of hip-hop and electronic music. Like the live arrangements will draw on a lot of those types of colours. So I ended up studying up on that stuff so that I could keep up with keyboard players who had grown up playing gospel music in church and were all over all of that stuff.
At a high harmonic level.
Yeah, like...
where it's a very different thing.
With crazy ears, and just like, what is this? My hands don't have vocabulary for this sound I'm hearing. So I worked quite hard on trying to give my hands that stuff. So I thought I could bring a little smattering of that and give it a little bit of a fusiony twist, but try and keep that rock energy, like it's a rock song.
Without getting too like pretentious or ruining the energy.
Exactly, yeah. I wanted it to sound interesting and cool. It needed to like feel cool rather than like unnecessarily flexing. So if at that point we'd like introduced a load of like complex fusion changes and stuff,
I would have derailed everything.
It would have derailed the whole energy of the tune. So essentially we're just playing over E. So there's no piano or rhythm guitar. So until the rhythm guitar comes in, it's more like riff stuff, but there's nothing that's really determining what to play. So you
make the rules.
Yeah, we could make up the rules. We could be quite creative with what different tensions and flavors. So yeah, we had a few happy accidents where we're like, okay, for this section, like let's pick up the pace. So for like, the first section was like, let's establish some kind of ideas with some phrasing and stuff, and did some outside ideas that pulled us out and back in. And then the second section was, right, let's like get it feeling a bit more relentless. And that was where some of the outside notes started to pop out. Like, oh, that was really cool. Like, let's come back to that idea. And then by the time we get to the third section of the solo, that's where we're like, we're just rocking out shred, traditional pentatonic.
But I think
shred.
you deserve that at that point.
100%.
There's been enough establishing and building and outside and bringing it back in. And it's not like if you'd have started with, I think that was something that happened once or twice. Maybe you were coming in a bit hot in the verses or something because you wanted to make a statement. You were like, right, I'm finally making my big rock song. Yes. And my job is to be like, well, can't hold your horses, bro. There's like 4 minutes of this thing.
You did say that quite a lot.
We'll get there. We're going to get there, don't worry.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad it worked out the way it did because everything feels balanced and it's a wicked journey.
Yes. Yeah.
That's probably the thing other than saying that's your problem, not mine. When I'm asking you to do sick stuff, I'm like, yeah, just do it faster. And you're like, just do it faster. What? Other than that, I think that, the main thing I was repeating was like, we're going to get there. We're going to get shredding. Don't worry. We don't need to do it right now.
And that was really good because you were like pushing me to think in that compositional creative way, being like, yeah, you're going to get your chance to show what you can do.
Yeah, it's coming. But this song is not going to not have a shreddy solo.
Yeah.
Let's be frank.
Exactly. But like, if this is going to be a 4-minute tune, then this needs to be not just it'd be like someone just like reading the dictionary at you otherwise. Like, here's all of my biggest words. Like, you wouldn't be able to follow a story. Like, it's not telling a story.
The comparison I usually make if I'm teaching is like, war films usually have some down moments and some drama and reasons to care about the characters. It's not just like Normandy Beach and then a bomb and then another bomb and then a machine gun. Like, we need a reason to care. We need like ebb and flow and stuff. Yeah,
that's quite a cool analogy. I like that.
Shame it's so violent, really. There's something I wanted to say. Yeah, I remember, I feel like the whole tune flowed. It was pretty easy to write. It just took the sessions. It just took the time. But one thing, do you remember struggling with any part in particular? Because from memory, the only bit that we just tried to stave off for the longest was the first verse.
That was the hardest bit of the tune.
Where everything had been written and we finally reached the day where it was like, the only thing left is this verse and we have to do it now. Yeah. And we both walked in like,
Yeah, we had a tough couple of sessions trying to get that first verse down. And because the second verse was like one of the main early ideas that I had, and I really wanted that to be the first verse. And you were very like, this is a second verse because it's open and it's flowing and like, so, you know, like we need something to establish like this moment coming, which was quite hard to do because everything else had been, we'd come up with an idea and then we'd developed that, but we were kind of reverse engineering a development. So that was a harder thing to do. So that was the hardest bit to do, but we eventually...
That took a second to agree on.
It did take a little while. It took me a while to get convinced, and you were like, let's just leave it here for now.
Yeah.
And the longer it stayed there, I was like, the more this makes sense that it's there, and I kind of hear that. So,
which is a great tip, by the way, if you're having a friendly disagreement musically, just give them leave it there for now, and we'll come back to it.
And then it'll just stay
and
there.
Then everyone will just get used to it. That's not something I've ever actively done, but it's happened a lot where you come back, if you can't necessarily agree on something, you come back to it. But now, because you're used to listening to this demo and that's the space it takes, now that's where the journey goes as far as your ears are concerned.
Yeah, and you end up subliminally building off of that.
Yeah. It's a bit mad. Is that authentic or? Anywho, there was another thing I was going to say, but I completely forgot. Ah, yes, the name. That was also difficult.
Oh,
that also took a second for you to come up with.
It did. That did take ages to come up with.
And now that you have it, it's very obvious to me. It's
it
makes
very
sense, obvious name.
Yeah. For those that don't know, like a few people have asked me, like, oh, why Eddie's Yard? I think anybody who's like a fan of
it should be quite obvious.
It should be quite obvious to like guitar players and fans of instrumental guitar music. But if there's anyone watching this who isn't from, you know, the rock background or has just lived under a rock, like, so without wanting to be disrespectful to anyone, like there's tons of influences in there. Like most of the influences that people are mentioning are like, you know, the foundational like rock fusion guys like Greg Howe and Richie Kotzen and Blues Sarasano and guys like that. And there's loads of other influences in there as well. But obviously the whole genre, like the whole style, like, and none of those players would exist if Eddie Van Halen hadn't turned up on the scene in '78 and done Eruption and like done his thing. Like, so he is the genesis of that particular style of playing. Like, he is he's the turning point historically in the way that guitar was approached.
And we're all guests in this house.
Yeah, and essentially it's like we're all doing this thing, we've all developed our ideas, we're all like pushing it, and not that I'm pushing it, but like all those other guys, my hitters, are all like span it on, another yard down the road. But at the end of the day, we're all just playing in Eddie's back garden. Like,
right.
We wouldn't be here if he hadn't opened the door to it. So, and that was the idea. And part of me maybe also kind of thought, like, are people always compare everything to something they know, and that's just like a natural human thing. So part of it was, are people going to immediately draw this connection to Eddie and that whole world? Like, hopefully yes, because that's what's inspired it.
Yeah.
But if I get out in front of it by acknowledging that's where the inspiration comes from, and it's like a tip of the hat. Like
it's respectful.
A respectful nod to, I can only do this because of everything that's come before me. So I've been able to learn from what's come before and now do my own take on it.
I just wanted to throw Nuno's name out there because I don't think it's come up yet, and
yes,
that's important.
Yeah, he's been a massive influence. Like that whole, those kind of tight, funky rhythm things in the pre-chorus and the first pre-chorus. That's,
I think
totally
all of the riffs in this basically kind of come from that school.
100%. It's totally out of
playful, leady rhythm riffs. Yeah, funky,
tight and choppy. And
all that stuff.
That's definitely.
So cheers, bro. I'm sure he's watching.
I mean, I would be thrilled if he was.
Yeah, that would be insane.
Because he is like one of my favourite players of all time. Yeah. So
the other one thing I quickly wanted to touch on is we share, even though our lives and our musical paths have gone in different directions, we do share a lot of heavy influences, which is something I forgot about and then remembered when we got back in the room and I heard your guitar tone and everything. For example, we were referring to a couple of sections of this song as the Arch Enemy bit.
Yes.
And I feel it feels strange doing that sometimes because we're not trying to rip anyone off. We're trying to make fresh music, but you just label it as the first place you heard that idea.
Yes, that's where that inspiration kind of came from.
But so what are some of your kind of heavier, I feel like around the same age, we were probably listening to the same kind of metal bands.
Yes, I was really into the European melodic death metal stuff. Like, so I liked some of the American bands, like I liked Killswitch Engage, but like more of that kind of hardcore, like American-based stuff that was like more riffy and more, like some of it more atonal as well. Didn't appeal to me as much as like the European stuff, which had much more like lead guitar emphasis and less riff emphasis. So that like were some riffs. So, but like In Flames and Arch Enemy were like my two favorite bands. Just because the songwriting's so good, like especially for In Flames, like great guitar players, but not shredders. But
their melody game
is off the charts. Yeah. And I think because they weren't shredders, it was like, well, I'm not going to sit down and do like an Yngwie impression because that's not who I am as a player. So I'm going to like come up with the most sick melody.
Again and again and again.
Yeah, just like unbelievable. Like their best albums, Colony, Clayman, Come Clarity.
It's a big one for me.
That was a significant album when they brought that out because that was like them returning to what they did best because they'd gone very like electronic on a couple of records before, and so they were kind of bringing back the old school aggression and all the melodies and stuff, and it was like,
do you believe I bought that album just because I thought the cover looked cool?
I mean, it was a sick cover.
I had no idea what I was in for and it just blew my mind. I'm so glad I did that.
Yeah,
so glad
first track, Take This Life, just brutal, great melodic hooks, like aggressive energy. But Arch Enemy were very, very similar as well. Like They played in the same tuning, but they were big Yngwie fans, so they had more of that influence. But like both in the songwriting, actually, if you listen to old school Yngwie tunes, I was like, oh yeah, this is where Michael Lambert got those ideas from compositionally, which are maybe not as obvious to most people. But then his younger brother Chris had the chops, like so he was bringing all the Phrygian dominant shred. And
what's the song with the whole tone picking?
Off which album now?
The one before Doomsday Machine.
Oh,
it's the opening track.
Off Anthems of Rebellion.
Yes.
Oh gosh, can't remember. It's been so long since I listened to that record now.
And it's got the spider but
oh, I can't remember that tune.
What's weird is that I didn't sing Arch Enemy riff just now. That was The Middle of Waves by Guthrie. Similar. Anyway, we will get back to you on that because this big timer on the floor that I keep looking at to make sure we don't go over an hour
this
time.
Us we need to move on. So.
Wrap it. I think I've covered everything I wanted to say, or everything I wanted to hear you say. Is there anything else you wanted to say to any listeners or watchers or supporters or new fans of Phil Short?
I just want to say thank you to everyone who's checked out the tune, whether you bought it on JTC or whether you've streamed it on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you stream, or if you bought it from Bandcamp. I've had one sale who paid a $5 for it, so thank you, sir. That I really appreciated that support, that kind of token of gratitude. So yeah, thanks very much. Really appreciate it, and hopefully it won't be too long before we drop the next track.
Sick. That's watertight.
That was way better.
There's no problems with that.
That was great. We can just sync the audio.